When you're trying to persuade a person or an audience, using an appeal to emotion is going to be more effective for you than using a logical argument. You're all going to be faced with situations where you have to do persuading. My name is Stephen Strickland, and for many years I tried persuading people using logical arguments, using facts and statistics and numbers, and occasionally it worked, but generally I got minimal results. So I began incorporating appeals to emotion within my arguments, and I saw a change. I saw people were more responsive, more receptive to what I was saying, more interested in what I was saying, and ultimately more people would become were being persuaded. So I'm going to talk about the use of appeals to emotion as a more effective measure for persuading people than logical arguments. Author and organizational psychologist Rob Young gives an example, saying most people in the Western world know that smoking cigarettes is bad for you and understand the principles of weight loss, but that's not enough to motivate them to change. People do not listen to facts. You need an emotional angle. And if you've ever tried convincing a person to stop smoking by saying things like, "Don't you know it causes lung cancer?" or "It is so expensive," or "Don't you wish you had more energy?" These are logical arguments. Yeah, sure, you may be passionate about arguing them, but they're logical arguments, and most of the time it was probably unsuccessful. The person probably dismissed it shortly thereafter and probably kept smoking. But if you took an emotional angle, remember Grandma Susie? When she was dying of lung cancer, we had to stand over her deathbed to see in the agony that she was in. You don't want that. This emotional angle is going to resonate more deeply with the individual who you're trying to persuade, and ultimately will have a better chance of persuading them. See, some people have rational thought processes. All people have emotional thought processes. Emotion is something that's present in everyone. So if you're using appeal to emotion within your argument, you're appealing to your entire audience, no matter what their background is. But if you're using logical arguments, you're only really appealing to a certain portion of the audience, reducing your chances of being effective in the case of an audience of multiple people. An article from Forbes entitled 21 Principles of Persuasion gives a list of techniques on persuading people, and most of those techniques are emotional in nature. I'm gonna talk about a couple of them briefly. The first one is compliments. Now, of course, who doesn't like compliments? But compliments are inherently emotional. You tell somebody they look nice today, it's gonna invoke or generate a sense of happiness, joy, you name it. But it's a good feeling, and it promotes a sense of trust between the recipient and the deliverer, which is a necessary component when you're trying to persuade someone. Another technique that's listed is a sense of urgency. And you tell some you generate the feeling within the audience that they need to act now. That's an emotional response that they have to whatever you said to get them to feel that way. But that's going to promote them to action or motivate them to act more quickly, and that's an appeal to emotion. Now, Toastmasters International, which is a renowned organization that educates and teaches public speakers how to be public speakers. They say in some of their literature, in most persuasive situations, people react based on emotions, then justify their actions with logic. And this is supported by scientific research suggesting that emotions play a large role in our decision-making process. And there was a study done that it studied people who had brain damage in their area of their brain associated with feeling emotion. And what they found was that people who could not process emotion properly also had difficulty making decision, which supports the idea that emotion is a large part of the decision making, and persuasion is essentially getting people to make a decision. So if you're ever in a job interview and the interviewer is asking you what makes you a better candidate than another candidate, you can tell them that I'm a good worker, or I've been at my last job for 5.5 years without any disciplinary actions against me, or any number of facts. But those are logical arguments, and yeah, it might work, you might get the job, but I bet you if you use an emotional argument, and I'll say, if I were hiring somebody, I would be so glad to know that the person I hired is going to be responsible and going to be here when they need to be here, and going to be reliable. They won't need to be micromanaged, so that I'm not going to be back here in a couple of days giving another interview trying to fill that position again. It's going to be more effective because now you're empathizing with the person giving you the interview. You're putting yourself in their shoes, and then you're relating back to them what would make it a good decision to hire you. And this is going to be more effective than simply stating, I had a good run at my last job. That's how you know I'm a good employee. So when you find yourself in situations where you need to persuade people, consider using appeals to emotion. You're going to be more effective. You're going to have better results, and you will have better outcomes. Thank you.